Hello, my name is Mesut Durukal. I'm a software quality assurance automation engineer. When we are talking about quality, we can mention lots of different aspects on top of functionality, right? For example, the performance, security, maintainability, compatibility, portability, and lots of different capabilities. But most probably, usability or the user friendliness of our product or the application is one of the most important quality aspects, especially from the user's perspective, right? Because even if the functions are working properly or all the features are functioning properly, if users are not easily finding those features or they are struggling to go over those use cases, then of course they will not be happy by using this product or the application, right? So this is why it is one of the most important quality aspects. But how can we improve the usability of our product? Let's discuss details together in this session. So what I'll go over is, first of all, of course, the basic principles and the most fundamental aspects of the usability. And then sometimes we have to unlearn what we learn, right? Because of course we will go over the very basic principles, but if your user profiles or maybe their needs and the necessities or the requirements are different than a regular or some other usual profiles, then you have to think about it and you have to build your quality aspects depending on these requirements. So we have to learn our user needs and the profiles and then build our application on top of that. And finally, in the last section, I will talk about the usability for a test automation framework, because usability is everywhere. Sometimes we think that we consider usability only for the end products. Test code is not an end product, right? The end users will not see it, but even if the end users will not see it, some users will see. Test automation code will have some users. So we will talk about this, and this will be one idea to think about or to take the usability into consideration while developing or building anything, not only the end product, but a component or a part of our delivery services or CI/CD jobs. If somehow we are building some component, even if the end users will not see it, still it will have a lot of impact on the maintenance and the other quality aspects. So we will discuss why it is important to consider usability for all our services. So again, when I'm talking about the basic principles, I will not just as a very didactic way like go over each of definition, but what I will do instead is I will share a lot of examples and we will discuss what is good, what is not, and what can be improved. And I will show some examples over some different brands or applications about how they improved over years their usability. Previously, about 10 years, 20 years ago, how it was, and now how it is. We will see both, and we will compare the differences and we will analyze the improvement rooms. So let's get started. The basic principles, the very first example I have is the traditional remote controllers, right? So what we see here is there are too many buttons, but sometimes the more function is not the more user can do, right? Because there are too many buttons, but sometimes I remember even if when I was using it, I was struggling to find the button that I was looking for. So there are too many, and there is no systematic layout. I mean, sometimes I'm sure there is uh, a reason behind for that design, but for me it was not easy to learn. So I was struggling to find the button. So the more function was not the more I can do. This was the first thing. And again, I could not learn it. Sometimes I was just trying. Okay, maybe this button. No, it doesn't work. So the other one. So it always happens. Like uh, you try this and it doesn't work. Okay, try the other one. So this means I cannot learn it. Normally, after some time, even if I could not find the correct one at once, but at least the second one, the third one, at some point I should learn the correct one, right? But if I cannot learn it, and if I continuously go to try and see, then it means the product maybe has a poor learnability. So this was another aspect. And we also discussed about the layout. And finally, there were some labeling on the buttons. But again, like I could not understand some abbreviations because maybe if you are familiar with the relevant domain, you can know what PIP stands for. But if you are not familiar with the domain or if you did not use similar products previously, then you can struggle. So the product designers should think about all the users, right? There might be senior people using it, there might be junior people who do not know the domain very well, or there might be people who needs the accessibility aspects of the product. So we should think everything about the design, and we should build our product according to these needs. And eventually, after a lot of implementations, actually this is what the need was, right? So very basic, very simple. So the key word here is simplicity. Only a few buttons. We don't need over 50 buttons. Only a few. Of course, the technological background also lets this design happening in a in a simpler way, right? Because now there's the touch button functionality and the smart TVs accept opening menus on the screen. So the technological background also lets it, but of course the design approaches went in a simpler and more usable way. So this is how the remote controller design end up. Another example, the next one is sometimes even if we have very few functions, it might be still confusing. Like I'm not sure how many people are using WhatsApp listening to this talk, but this screen was always confusing to me. Like I'm on a call, and whenever you have a new call and a new upcoming call, then you have a pop-up warning. It says actually there are two options. Like the first is there are some other small options, but two main options are decline and end and accept. So I mean it is not clear for me. End and accept means actually it means end the previous one and accept the incoming one. But at first when I see this screen, I didn't know what I have to do. So and even the places of the buttons, right? For example, if you are used to click the one on the left side, then you can accidentally click the decline even if you want to accept the new one, or the other way around, even if you want to uh, end the so the decline is sorry, rejecting the incoming call, right? I'm still confusing. And the other way around, like if you want to accept the new one and end the previous one, you have to click the right one. But if you are used to click the left one for accepting, then you can accidentally click the wrong button. So it is confusing. So the less is not always the clearer. Next example. This time we will talk about consistency. So this is an example from Indeed, the company that I'm working for. So the beta version was founded at 2004. So when we see the beta version, even if it is first going to production, we can see a very basic functionality which was searching for jobs. So there is a keyword. So what are you looking for? For example, I'm searching for a UX designer, right? And there is a where text field that you can pass the location. So I'm looking for UX designer roles in Austin area. So two keywords and find jobs button. So it's very simple, a very short and easy form to use. Pass two keywords and click the button. That's it. And on the right hand side, we see a very recent version of Indeed website. So it is very similar, right? So we can already talk about consistency over 20 years. Of course, we can see some visual improvements, like the buttons or the text areas are more clear and more accessible, most probably. But other than that, the functionality is almost same. It is still very simple. Just pass your keywords and the location and click the search button. So that's it. It's not confusing. I already know what I have to do. Like, there's no reason to mix things up, and you are probably you find it very straightforward to use. On the contrary, sometimes error handling is very important because we are most of the time talking about the positive cases, but how about the negative cases, right? Negative use cases, which means sometimes the user passes the wrong input or bad format inputs, any kind of situation where can end up in error cases. So how the application or the system handles these kind of error cases? I'm sure most of you will be familiar with this kind of error messages, like unknown error or there is an error code, which is totally meaningless for you, right? For example, error code 1022. So what? What did I do wrong, right? For example, you should warn me about the correct usage. Like you passed this number, but it is violating the threshold or whatever, or you are passing a password or phone number, but the phone number digit number is not in the correct format. So somehow you should let the user know what he or she did wrong and how they can correct. Like instead of doing this, please pass this format, this number of digits or a relevant message so that the user can know, oh, okay, this was the problem and this is the way how I can fix it. And if you are showing just an error message, just a pop-up window where there is some meaningless messages or text, then it doesn't really help the users to understand the correct use case. Moving on, as I told in the beginning, let's go over some UX journeys, like how the designs were previously and how they are currently and in the modern situations. So this is one example from Yahoo, and I guess it is again about 20 years ago. And what we see here is, I think the function might be still considered as easy and clear, but at least the visual, uh, how the website looks, is not very good, right? For in terms of usability, because texts are small, and even if the search uh, area I can still see over there, but it is difficult to see. Like especially if you need some special accessibility needs, then of course we can say it is not the best. But when we see the most recent versions, we can already see the components, or at least the images are bigger, it is more visible, and the search field or the area is more visible and apparent to the users. So they can immediately know where to pass the keywords for or the queries for their searches, and they already easily see the search button over there. Another example, a very similar example, is from Amazon. So again, the text or the images are small, and the search text area is on the left top corner, very small one. But when we go to the recent one, then we can see the search is in the center on top. We can immediately see that, and the images are bigger, and the layout, the use of the page is more efficient, right? There is not too much free space, and the page is used very efficiently by mostly big images and the visuals, which will help user to understand what kind of products or the categories there are in the system. So to summarize what we have discussed so far, we went over some basic principles, right? Let's remember what we discussed about. Of course, for example, the performance of the system is very important, but not only that, not only the functionality and the performance, but also error handling and navigation, letting users know the correct use cases or what did they do wrong. These navigation and error handling or the feedback mechanisms are very important, and accessibility aspects are, of course, nowadays is very critical, very important. There are even some legal regulations to include those accessibility components, And we discussed about the consistency and learnability as well. And of course, familiarity with and visual clarity. Like the very basic, the most important functionalities should be very obvious. Like if the main functionality, the main feature is, for example, searching jobs, then search jobs should be the most obvious component on the page. You might add some other functionalities, but most important feature should be the most visible or the obvious one. So this was the first part, was the basic principles of usability. But in the second part, let's talk about some other cases where we should think out of the box. Like sometimes you should think not only applying the principles or the standards, but you should a little bit think about your special use cases and user needs and design your products accordingly. So in this session, what I will share is an example from the Japanese market. So and showing lots of different Japanese websites. I will explain why I'm showing those Japanese. At least, actually, it is not only Japanese, but most the Asian region, China, Japan, and some other similar countries around. And I will explain the reason behind. So let's get started by seeing some examples. So when you start typing like why Japanese web in Google, when you start your query, you will already see some auto completions like why it is so weird, why it is so different. And when you see some Japanese website, you will understand what it means. Because let me show you some visuals. As we can see, most of Japanese websites are very crowded, lots of texts. And we all in the first part we discussed about simplicity, right? But we can see it is not the case in this time. So we might consider some different principles. And let me focus on some specific web sites or the web pages or the applications, and we can better see how the difference is. For example, again, this is Rakuten is a very huge company in Japan, and they have, of course, international operations as well. So Rakuten Travel, this is the international version. We can see the English locale over there. So it looks very familiar, right? For the depending on the modern design principles. But when we see the local version, it is a little bit different, right? There are too many, for example, filterings. I can select the dates and lots of different accommodation features over there as I can read. And it, shortly, it is very crowded. There are too many features, all the features in one page. So we will talk about this everywhere at one place. So this is the keyword. I'm showing the international version as well to be able to compare and to highlight that they know normally how it works in the Western area. It doesn't mean that they don't know how a web page should be designed, but they intentionally design in this way, in this APEC area, in the Japan or China and similar countries. So another example, this is Yahoo again. This is the international version, and when we see the Yahoo Japan, again, it looks a little bit old-fashioned to us, right? But it is intentional because again, normally they know how it can be designed in a different way, so that they do for the international versions. But in Japan, this is intentionally designed in this way. So we will come to again the reasons behind. But one last example is this Starbucks, I guess. So on the left hand side, we can see the other versions in other areas, and on the right hand side, again, a very crowded page, lots of information, lots of text and explanations, right? So let's discuss why it is like that. First of all, alphabet. You might be surprised for seeing this. What is the relevance with alphabet? But in China and Japan, kanji alphabet is used, which is a logogram, which means like all the characters are standing for some words. The character itself is already a word. So these people, by learning these languages, when seeing lots of different logograms on around here and there, they are already familiar to pick information from a very small space. So the language itself already encourages a tendency towards a crowded design. So whenever they are reading something, whenever they are investigating or seeing some visuals, graphics, or even web pages, they already have a tendency to pick information very quickly. So when it is the page does not have too much text or does not have too much information, they find it a little bit weird. Like in the Western world, the very crowded page might look as weird, but in Japan it is the other way around. Like if it has too few information, then it is found as weird. Like it has almost nothing. They call it as samishi, which means like it is very poor. So they need some more information. And again, of course, there are some more cultural aspects behind. For example, the culture depends on eliminating waste. Like we can see this in lean production approaches, disciplines, and other some quality approaches. Eliminating waste. So this applies even on web page design as well. Like if on the page there are some empty spaces, they don't like it. So they try to use every single space to put some information. This is one reason. And the other reason is even depending on the society, since the society is an aging society. So now we are talking about the user profiles, right? So this is important to analyze your target profiles or the users. So whenever you change the design, it might be frustrating for them because whenever they are already used to use some applications or some versions, specific versions, when you change, then it might be frustrating for them. And of course, since they are used to use one button, one functionality approach, like remember the old fashioned radios, there is a button for play, there is a button for pause, next, previous. There are lots of different functionalities, and for each functionality, there is one button, right? One button, one functionality. So when transforming this into modern design principles, like if you put only one button, and if you design a drop box menu to be able to select lots of different options, it is not the best approach in Japan because it is not one button, one functionality, right? You try to collect everything together in a single space, so it doesn't work very well. So all the information in one place because this also gives them the chance to collect several information. So everything together in one place, no need to navigate to other places, and one button, one functionality principle. Like no need to scroll down or no need to click to open the drop down or other menu options, menu items. Everything should be visible. The buttons should be already there, and whenever you click, then you should already do whatever you want to do. There's no need for complexity. Actually, like the design itself looks complexity, but the use cases or the steps are one step. Like if you find the relevant button, then it's one click, finish. No scroll down, no opening the menu items, no navigating through different components. Everything in one place, crowded, but one button, one functionality. Finally, last section, let's talk about usability on different components, not only the end functionality or the products which will be visible for the end users, but also lots of different components which are a part of our software delivery services or maybe CI/CD pipelines. So again, from my perspective as a quality engineer, quality assurance engineer, like the test automation framework is very important. And again, the end users will not see your test code. So you might think, okay, I don't have to think about the quality in my test code. But that is not the case. Even though end users will not see your code, some other users, some internal partners will see your code. They might be other testers, or they might be developers, product owners, which are reading your code, because sometimes they might try to understand the test coverage, so that they might try to go over test cases. They will read your code. Or maybe other testers might try to write some other test cases to improve the coverage, so that if your test cases are reusable or not, if the other testers can easily add some more tests. This will show or give some ideas about the usability or your test automation framework. And finally, some people, like maybe the product owner, might try to execute the regression test to see the bugs or the number of issues the product have. So how easily your test can be executed, or whenever they are executed, how flaky they are, or how robust, how reliable they are. Whenever they are executed, if they are reporting lots of different false alarms or uh, some wrong results, then it means your test automation framework is not reliable and is not usable, is not user friendly. So this was just a very small example for just a heads up for thinking about usability, whatever you are doing. You are designing a web page, of course you should think about usability. Are you designing an API server, an endpoint? Of course you should think about usability. Are you writing tests? Of course, think about usability. So usability everywhere, every time, whatever you are doing, whenever you are implementing or deploying your services. So finally, summary is we discussed about very basic principles of usability, which was like the visual clarity, performance, what else, consistency, and simplicity, and ease to use, right? Not having struggles to find or use the functions or the features. And then we discussed a specific use case or specific case where we took Japanese market under consideration, and we investigate lots of different websites, and we discussed the reasons behind the different designs, right? So the key idea here was, for sharing this specific case, was being aware of your users. Of course, we should learn about the standards, the very basic principles, which is applicable for most of the cases. But your user profiles might be different. So just go over their needs and requirements and build your design on top of those requirements. And finally, we discussed about the need of UX and usability, user friendliness for everything. Not only the web applications, but also everything we develop and deploy as a part of our delivery services. So thank you so much for listening to me. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm leaving my LinkedIn profile here.